Yo, what is up? And I'm going to show you a DEXA scan, and this is going to give you an idea of the numbers that I look at and the reasoning behind all these numbers and what they actually mean to you. So anytime anyone looks at a DEXA scan, the first things that they look at is always like body fat, lean mass, when the reality is a DEXA scan can actually get a lot deeper. And big ups and thanks to our homie Tony from the Academy, because he has volunteered his DEXA scan to be analyzed. And Tony and anyone who takes a DEXA scan, I would say to actually get another DEXA scan to come about 10 minutes, or I was saying 10 minutes, 6 weeks from the original DEXA scan. So with that being said, let's actually talk about the original, or actually talk about his DEXA scan right here. And then we're going to show you everything that actually matters inside of it. All right. So number one is we're looking at our man's DEXA right here. And what I am particularly looking at when I see a DEXA scan is going to be, the very first thing is obviously his current body fat level. So if we're looking over here, if you can see my cursor, his current body fat level is at 29.9%, which is what I would consider to be on the danger end of things. We definitely need to get that down. Based on, I'm not going to say what his age is. Actually, he's not old. He's around actually in between his 30s and 40s. So I would say a really good body fat percentage to bring down to, or to bring it down to, would actually be into the low 20s, if not the teens. That would have you in the optimal state in terms of where you want your body fat level to be at for your age. Now, second thing I'm looking at is lean tissue. So lean tissue is essentially the amount of tissue or the amount of weight that's left over when you don't have any fat mass. And one of the things, now you're not necessarily going to be looking at it right now, but what you are going to be doing is when you retake your DEXA scan, doing everything that we're doing inside of the Academy, inside of our system, what we're looking for is we're looking for an increase in lean tissue. We found that in a, say, like a 12-week phase, anyone can do around, I would say, anywhere between, we've seen anywhere between 2 to 12 pounds of lean tissue being gained, especially in beginners, especially when they're restarting and they haven't really been in the gym for that long. We found that people can drop their fat tissue and gain lean tissue at the same time. So this is his baseline, and this is what we're looking at. So the lean tissue, we're not necessarily going to spend too much time on. And yeah, this is where he's at. He's basically at 29.9% body fat. And we're going to get into the rest of the numbers that actually matter. So let me just stop this share right here, and let me do a new share on the new one, or actually on the next page. And let me see if I can actually do that with Zoom right here. They allow me to do this. I hope so. Okay, so there we go. So when I'm looking at this, what I'm looking for specifically is where exactly does Tony store the fat on his body? So there's two particular areas that I'm looking at. One of them is called the android, which is anywhere in between your neck and your waistline. And Tony is coming in at about 5% higher than his original body fat percentage. So his android region, or his belly fat region, is around 36.1. And with android fat storage, this is particularly known as the distribution of fat around the trunk and abdomen area. Now, due to this type of distribution, people who exhibit excess android fat patterns will portray a little bit of a beer gut shaped appearance, where the waist is much larger than the hips. Now, this is very typical in males, and android fat is not stored subcutaneously. We'll talk about gynoid fat in a second, but it's different than gynoid fat because android fat is stored viscerally. This means that it is in and around the organs located in your abdominal cavity. So the main consequence of storing unhealthy amounts of android fat storage or having unhealthy amounts is the fact that it can compress and restrict blood flow to your vital organs. And this can lead to things like insulin resistance, heart disease, and other nasty diseases that change your overall hormonal profile. And I will say that a high prevalence of android fat shows that your testosterone will be affected in a negative way. One of the best ways in which to boost testosterone is to get rid of the belly fat, to get rid of fat in general, to have a normal amount of fat, and to have a higher amount of muscle. Okay. So we go into gynoid fat. Gynoid fat for him, he's about 30.3, which is actually almost in line with his current body fat percentage. And gynoid fat is not the fat you really have to worry about. This is actually the accumulation of excess fat around your hip, bum, and thigh regions. And due to this type of distribution, people who kind of exhibit excess gynoid fat patterns will have a apple bottom shaped appearance where the bum and hips are much larger than the waist. And this type of distribution is very typical in females. So if you're female watching this, then you may notice that your gynoid is a lot more than your android, which is fantastic, right? And gynoid fat is actually stored in what we call subcutaneous levels, which means that these fat stores on the surface of the body, they're on the surface of the body. They're just underneath the skin and right above the muscle. And evidence actually shows that people who exhibit a gynoid fat pattern is usually controlled by female productive hormones such as estrogen. And although you may have excess fat here and you want to reduce it for aesthetic reasons, there really is no immediate health risk of obesity related diseases. Now, if we scroll down, if you actually look down, the waist to hip ideal is to actually get it underneath. You're going to see A to G ratio. You're going to see the android, and you can see the gynoid, and you're going to see the A to G ratio. So when you determine the A to G ratio or the android to gynoid ratio, it essentially is just basically what is the ratio between how much android fat you have and how much gynoid fat you have. You can see Tony is coming in at 1.18. We want this number to be below 1 as much as humanly possible because we actually see that this is a very critical number. It's directly correlated to the prevalence of visceral fat, which is the next number. If you actually go a little bit more down, you're going to see estimated visceral adipose tissue. So Tony is coming in at 1.69. They say that they want it to be underneath 1 in general. You want this to be as close to 0 as humanly possible. So when we're looking at visceral fat, we have to understand what it is. So it is the body fat that's stored within your abdominal cavity and is therefore stored around a number of important internal organs, such as the liver, the pancreas, and the intestines. So visceral fat is actually referred to as active fat because research actually shows that this type of fat plays a very distinctive and potentially dangerous role in affecting how your hormones function. So when it comes to visceral fat, carrying a high amount of visceral fat is known to be associated with insulin resistance, which can lead to glucose intolerance, which can lead to type 2 diabetes. And here are the very specific health risks that are associated with visceral fat. Number 1 is cardiovascular disease. Number 2 is type 2 diabetes. Number 3 is metabolic syndrome. The last one is cancer. And to a large degree, a lot of these can be prevented by getting rid of visceral fat and getting it to as close to 0 as possible. But in Tony's case, we want it to be underneath 1 as much as humanly possible. Okay. And then in other DEXA scans, they'll show you the estimated resting metabolic rate. If you've ever done it, they'll show you exactly what your resting metabolic rate is. And in general, resting metabolic rate is the calories burned when you are at complete rest. So that means that, if you are doing nothing and just sitting on the couch all day, then essentially that is what you are going to be burning. It's almost like if you were in a coma, this is how much calories you would be burning on a regular basis. So it doesn't have that, or actually I don't see it on his current DEXA scan. But again, this is what we can take from, say a DEXA scan like this, right? It's pretty much like when I look at something or when I look at a body fat percentage like this, it's just basically a couple of things. One could be just overstress. It could be overcompensation in terms of processed foods. You most likely gained weight in a way that actually compromises your body. And now is the time to start improving all of this. So number 1 is processed foods. probably not your friend, at least not for now. We need to create an environment where fat burning is as efficient as possible. So I would actually steer towards having zero processed foods go into the body. I would actually steer towards having zero alcohol, because these things can actually create an environment in your body where it's going to be really hard for your body to actually burn off fat. Number two is workouts are non-negotiable, and high protein is non-negotiable. Eating high protein. We need to build muscle inside of the body. We need to make sure that you are gaining lean mass, which is actually going to offset your body fat level to a large degree. So we need to make our workouts and eating high protein as non-negotiable as possible. And I would say, the last one is our number one goal is to get Tony back to normal metabolic health. For him, that would be getting his body fat into the low 20s and the teens. And that is essentially all we're going to be focused on. And we're going to be doing that by following the system, by eating the way that we're eating, by drinking the water, by working out the way that we're working out. And it's really not rocket science, but it will take a high amount of accountability. And thankfully, I'm seeing Tony just pretty much just participating like crazy inside of the group. And then that is what's going to drive the results, because we need high buy-in in terms of what we're trying to do. And if you're buying in, you're participating and doing all that, then pretty much it's almost like you're setting the stage for you to get the best results possible. So this is an analyzation of a DEXA scan. When you do this, let's reach back to this video, and you can actually see and analyze the numbers for yourself. And if you have any questions, or if you need further feedback on your DEXA scan, go onto the private community and we'll show you exactly, we'll answer every single question that you have. So yeah, get to the private community, ask your questions, and then that's it. Hope you got a lot out of this DEXA scan analyzation, and I'll see you inside the private group.